Hey everyone, and welcome to Superhero Speak interview series. This week, I am joined by the creative mind behind Nine Realm Publishing, and it's Michael Oden. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing pretty good. We're here to talk about your book, The Embrace, which is currently on Kickstarter. Um,
Yeah.
so get right into it. For those who are watching, what is the elevator pitch for The Embrace?
So the elevator pitch is effectively, it's a story that is a dark take on the superhero genre in the vein of James O'Barr's The Crow and Todd McFarlane, Robert Kirkman's Haunt, about a father who lost his son, and at a moment where he is at his lowest point, the case has been kind of closed and he's given up. He's saved by the ghost of his kid, and when they come together and embrace, he receives a vision of what happened the night his son died. And when he comes to, he is in a superhero suit powered by the ghost of his son. And so together they're going after his child's murderers to bring them to justice as the spectral superhero, the Embrace.
Oh, wow. That's kind of deep. Um,
Yeah.
what was the inspiration behind the story?
Uh, so when we initially did this book back in 2021, so this is actually a second chance campaign.
Okay.
But when we were doing this initial book, I was going through some things in my own life. I had separated from my first wife, and we were going through a custody fight that obviously brought in like
Mm,
a whole bunch of negative emotions that I wanted to take and make something constructive out of. And then, very similar to how James O'Barr. I'm not sure how familiar you are with his work with The Crow, but
yes.
that book was fueled emotionally by the loss of his own wife to a drunk
Hmm.
driving accident, and then the story of Eric and Shelley was he had read in a newspaper this article about this young broke couple in Chicago that got killed over a plastic engagement ring.
Mm,
Um, and so that's where Eric and Shelley Webster were born from. Similarly, for me, right after my son had been born, uh, his mom had shown me this article about a kid's body being discovered in this local park that we used to walk through. A 14-year-old kid that had been killed in a gang incident.
mm.
That had been missing for like the past couple of weeks. Uh, and so that that had always kind of stuck with me. Once you have a kid, and that's something that's like
Oh
I
yeah.
walk through that park like all the time, and it it left an imprint. So like when I was having all these negative emotions and everything like that going through the custody fight, and obviously my son James is very very much alive and well, but like when he's going back and forth between all those things, you have these feelings of loss and hurt and everything
Hmm.
like that. And then you know that story came back to my head, and so that's
Wow.
where David and Clarence find their life in the Embrace.
So so you mentioned yeah, of course, James O'Keefe sounds like he was a big inspiration for this.
100%.
So I'm going to ask you first, I think the obvious question. You're a fan of the original Brandon Lee film.
Yes.
What do you feel about the reboot?
Oh boy. We only have half an hour. That's like an entire show. To be succinct, it looks terrible. Um, I I know that there are people that are trying to show pictures of like different iterations of the Crow that have all the tattoos and everything like that.
Right.
That's all well and good. That's not Eric Draven and
Hmm.
Shelley Webster. If you're going to make the Crow of Eric Draven and Shelley Webster, do it right. And like I'm one of these people where I love the Brandon Lee movie. I do. I love the original graphic novel way more. And so I have never been one of those people that's like, oh, you can't remake the original Crow
Hmm.
ever. Just leave it be. Brandon did such a great job. Like I do think Brandon Lee did a phenomenal job. And that original movie was hindered by studios not being willing
Right.
to be more in line with what the comic was doing. But I absolutely would be down with a remake of The Crow that's more faithful to Aubert's creative vision that we see in the graphic novel, where you're having the kind of conversations between the bird and Eric, and it's kind of this journey of, okay, well, I mean, this guy's dead, but what do you get out of it? And there's all this, especially if you read the 10th anniversary edition of The Crow, which is like the best way to do it because it includes a whole bunch of pages and panels that Obar wasn't ready to put out when he initially did the
Right.
book. It was just they were too emotionally raw for him, and so he wasn't ready to let people see that yet. um I absolutely would champion that, and that's what I was hoping this movie was going to be, was because it's been through like production hell, and but like one of the initial phases, the intent was to have Obar there in the writing room
Mm-hmm.
doing the script, and it was going to be a true to form adaptation. And the moment that we got the first look and then the trailer, I was just like, this is a bad joke. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
I It's funny. I accidentally said O'Keefe, but yeah, I meant O'Bar. And
Yeah.
uh, just so my fans don't yell at me in the comments. Uh, but yeah, it's funny. I only have the 10th anniversary um, book. I got it as a gift after because I saw the movie
Mhm.
and I didn't realize that it was a
A lot
graphic
of people
novel.
don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my girlfriend at the time actually bought that for me, the 10th anniversary. So, um,
It's
so
beautiful, and it's
yeah.
got an amazing forward from James at
Yes.
the beginning that brings you to freaking tears. like uh,
Yes.
like it's a very good book.
Yeah. And Skarsgård just it just it felt like they were
What's
going for the Joker from
what's
the
so
Batfleck.
unfortunate about that is, like, if you were going to have, and if there was any modern actor to play a very good Crow that feels like the one that we got in that original graphic novel, Skarsgård's at like the top of my list to do that.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, probably one of the things that's most frustrating to me, is being like, this guy's a tremendous choice to play a comic book accurate
Right.
Eric Draven. And they have completely missed the ball.
They
And it's
it's
just
that it's definitely a studio going, we've got to make it modern so that the kids are interested in
we
Eric Draven.
what's
And
the crazy thing? We can't even blame the studio on this. This is entirely on the director, because the
yeah.
initial studio that had brought it up, I don't know if you know this, but this movie, the reason why it took so long to get our first shot, like, it's been done filming and everything and done being in post for about a year and a half now. But the reason why it took so long for us to get a first look and trailer is because when they went to the studio that initially was going to distribute it, they went, no, we're not doing this, and they
Mm,
dropped them. They had to reshop their finished project out to another studio. Like for the first time ever, the studio is not the villain here. It's this director and creative team that thought, oh well, I want
um
to modernize this for modern. Like, look, man, no, like, the people who are going to be going to see this movie are the people that cared about The Crow,
yeah.
and they're going to be dragging
We
their friends to go see it. Like, nobody is going to be seeing this thing and being like, oh yeah, like
we
a modern interpretation of The Crow. That's what we wanted. Like, no, people wanted what James O'Barr did back in the late '80s, early '90s, and you just fucked it up.
we've
So
been talking about this remake for years on the podcast because originally Jason Momoa at one point was
yeah,
um
he was
tapped to
in
play
there.
Draven.
Luke Evans
Yes.
was in there at one point. Like, there have been a tremendous list of talents
I
that have been brought in to frontman this. And Momoa was brought in back when the intention was still very much to have James O'Barr be a heavy
right.
presence in the writing room and what have you. And I don't know when that stopped being a thing, but that
Well,
should have been like the ultimate red flag.
I was gonna say once you said all this because I didn't know those pieces of it, especially the having to reshop around a distribution house. And um, given that O'Barr walked away from it, given that I think some of these actors walked away from it because they saw what a mess it was. Like, yeah, it doesn't bode well. This will even be a good movie. So,
No. And I mean, I think that the biggest problem with The Crow is, and especially if you're doing a comic book accurate one, is that it's
mhm,
so dark,
yeah,
and it feels so incredibly pessimistic when you're reading the graphic novel, because it's so fueled by Obar's kind of impotent rage at his own situation. And
right,
so there is this kind of hopelessness that goes through the graphic novel that's very poignant and very beautiful, but like a studio isn't going to want, like, they're going to see that as a massive flight risk, right? Like
right,
they want the MCU, they want, DC. They want a superhero, a traditional superhero movie that's going to be a big blockbuster with a
yeah,
massive ROI. That's a massive crowd pleaser. And the
right.
fact of the matter is, The Crow has never and will never be that character. And this attempt to try and treat him as such is just disingenuous. And
Yeah,
so, I mean, it is what it is. Bring people on who actually care about the character and the story. Stop bringing on people who just want to reinvent the wheel.
very true. So let's get back to you a little bit now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, but it's funny because I bring that up because obviously it shows you have a passion for comics. So like,
Yeah.
and the source material. So that's my next question is related to that idea is comic book writing. Is it something you've always wanted to do?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think that pretty much every nerd that grew up in my generation has at one point been like, yeah, I want to make comics when I grow up. And I absolutely did. You know, I wanted to write and draw.
Hmm.
Drawing comics takes a very specific amount of stuff. Like, and I know every artist that knows, well, it's just practice. I'm like, yes, I can practice and improve my line art. I can line drawing and character drawing and everything like that. And I can practice and get better at architecture and everything like that. There is a certain talent and patience to sequential art that is just not for everybody, and we need to stop pretending like that's something that can anybody can just do,
Right.
because there is an eye, a talent that is required to look at a page and translate words into sequential art, so that way we're conveying all of these
Hmm.
things, being able to manipulate camera angles and manipulate anatomy, bend the rules for stylistic things, but in a way that doesn't feel so overly gratuitous that you destroy the suspension of disbelief. There's just so much that goes into that element. So like at the end of the day, if like I draw, I'm not terrible, but like
Hmm.
I'm way more adept at words. So I sharpened the sword that I was best fit for, and so yeah. I mean, my career with comics started actually not as a comic book writer. I was doing freelance industry journalism for I got my start while I was deployed in 2015, 2016,
Hmm.
working with Movie Pilot through their verified creator program.
Oh,
I went
okay.
through their verified creator academy, and then that I worked with Heroic Hollywood for about a month,
Oh, wow.
which
Okay.
sucked.
Oh, really?
It was, so when you start off at Heroic Hollywood, and this is how it is at all of these sites,
Yeah.
this was very much an eye-opening thing for me. Was that like this was probably not what I wanted to do. Was like when you start off at all these sites, you're not like a paid journo yet. What you're doing is you're effectively regurgitating all the stuff that all the other uh, distribution networks are putting out there.
Right.
So like
Right.
they'll
Right.
have a page for their writers where the editors will be posting like a story from a competitive outlet. And so you have to grab that story and write your own version of it. And you're expected to do. what was it? We had like 3-hour shifts, and you had to submit like 5 stories in that period. And it was just some of the most miserable writing I've ever done. I did it for about a month. My son had just been born a couple months prior, and I was just like, hey man, I really appreciate this opportunity, but this is not for me. I just don't have the time or the energy to commit to it. But that's how it is working at any of those things. Movie pilot was a bit different because you started off writing your own stuff, and then you got discovered as talent, and then they kind of put you through a training process to have you write more in line with what was like generating them income. Which was a bit yucky, but like it was like I was still able to kind of write what I wanted, right? So long as I tailored it to their formula, that's all good. With Heroic Hollywood, you didn't really get that. Like you're just pumping out stuff. It's like, oh, this is what this story is. I'm going to reword it so that it has like my own personal flair, but it's literally the exact same thing that 12 other outlets have reported on.
And it's nine times out of 10, that's just coming from press releases from whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like that's where I got my start. Is I was doing stuff with that. Eventually, I ended up with a independent nerd blog called Up Your Geek. I was doing stuff with them for a while, and that's when I started doing indie comic reviews. My editor was like, "Hey, we've got these indie comics guys. Your reviews get a lot of traction. Do you want to take a stab at one?" And excuse me,
that's okay.
So I started doing some indie comic reviews, and around this point in time was when I started, messing around with my own comic scripts. And I was doing my book, Elysian Fields, which was like my first foray into doing comics. And I'm actually going to be doing a reboot of that next year. I'm very excited about. But like, I started getting really involved in the indie comic space, building up my own thing while also doing all these reviews for people. Like I did one for Perfect 10 and Dream Girl Sleeper Agent for Dave Brink over at Genuine Comics. I did one for Stellar Odyssey. I can't remember the publisher, what the publisher was on that. I did one for Terra Olympus from Stephen Koch from New Zealand. Great dude. He's actually a letterer on a whole bunch of my books. Tremendous talent. Great writer. And those first 2 books, he had Vaughn Randall doing the art, which was chef's kiss.
Oh, yes.
But like, so I got really involved in the community, and then, I had my second book, which did meh, and I almost left the creating world because of it. And then I had the Embrace, and that campaign, when we did the initial one over on Indiegogo, we brought in a little over 15K worldwide, which was awesome. It was a very humbling and exciting experience to have this character kind of take off and really just resonate with people.
Right. So was this all back in 2015 or?
So that span of events spans from 2015 through 2020, and from 2020 to now. So 2020 is when I started the Nine Realms imprint. And 2020 and 2021. 2020 I did Elysian Fields and Elysian Fields Pyramid Gambit. 2021 is when I did the Embrace. But 2015 through 2019, 2020 was when I was doing kind of freelance industry journalism on the side of doing like my day job stuff.
All right. The only reason I was asking is if you were doing Kickstarter back in 2015, I wanted to ask if you have noticed a difference between Kickstarter back then and today, because I do feel like it's become more mature, especially for comic creators. It's a lot better environment. Especially, you said this is sorry.
I would definitely say that in the past couple of years, even just from 2020 to now, Kickstarter has upped its game as a platform. It's actually, so like as I said, the majority of the campaigns that I did initially were on Indiegogo. and Indiegogo has stagnated, if not made their UI way more derogatory towards creators.
Yep.
Between shadow banning issues and their tip system, which is a whole other conversation. But between all of that stuff, and then the fact that they haven't updated any of their campaign building UI since 2020, it's the exact same it was when I started. Whereas Kickstarter has like revamped everything, and everything works way smoother over there from like a building standpoint, like building the Embrace campaign. I remember when I've tried to build a campaign back in 2020, like mid 2020 on Kickstarter, and the way that you uploaded graphics and everything like that was so different and seemed like I am terrible with technology. So it's I like the Geico, so easy a caveman can do it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't have a degree in graphic design. I don't know what half of this crap means. I don't know how to make this work. And so it was just very frustrating. Now it's just super easy to do. And a lot of that's also due to the fact that I've had to learn a lot. You know, when you get into this game as on your own, you're not just, you know, the writer of your book, you're the producer, you're the graphic designer, you're the this, you're the that. And so you have to learn.
Right.
So yeah, lots of hats to wear. But yeah, I definitely would say that I have seen a very solid and positive change in Kickstarter from when I started to now. The only thing that I'm not crazy about with Kickstarter at this point is that the pledges get taken out at the very end. I feel like that's the one thing that Indiegogo does that I like more, is because of the instantaneous consequences of this is what I backed, and it immediately takes the money out. You do not have the situations where you have people who will pledge a whole bunch and then cancel their pledges last minute.
Yep.
Because they can't actually afford it, and the only reason why they pledged that was so that the campaign could hit the stretch goal and they could feel good about themselves. But in all actuality, they weren't ever going to be able to get it in the first place. Like, it's one thing if you pledge for something and you had like a family emergency happen, and then all of a sudden you can't really afford that anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to reach out and be like, yo, I'm really sorry to do this, but like life can kick you in the nuts sometimes. I got to get my money back. That's one thing. But like when you have people who just straight up just cancel their pledge within like the last hour of a campaign because they can't afford the $200, $300 that they actually pledged, because the only reason why they did it was to make sure that the campaign got past this one stretch goal or got funded so that they could feel good about themselves. That's not okay.
Right. And I have worked or interviewed way too many creators who have all said that to me. Like,
yeah,
they'll wake up one day and they hit the goal they wanted to hit, and then later that same day it drops back down, and there's like, it's a roller coaster instead of just going up and up and up. It's got to be nerve-wracking. So
it's campaigning is like the best and worst part of this job. On the one hand, you get to have like great conversations like the one we're having right now, right? We get to meet new people and everything like that, and that's really exciting. The worst part about it is waking up every morning, checking your campaign page like like it's nobody's business. Just like, did I get any new backers today? How far has the tech mark moved?
Right. So the Embrace, the campaign, it's a 40-page book. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is it just a one shot, or do you have plans to do more?
So that's actually what the whole thing is this is a second chance on the first issue of a 5 to 6 issue miniseries. Right.
Okay.
So the second book is actually going to be launching July 12th. And the beautiful part about this campaign, since the book's already done and all I have to do is print these covers and then get into our fulfillment center, you're going to have this, but we're launching the second book July 12th. you will have your tracking information and fulfillment thing by that point, because I can't launch the next book until it's fulfilled.
Right.
So like you're gonna have the books within like a month. You're also getting a bit of an upgrade from the first edition of the book. In the first edition of the Embrace, the back has a fan art contest that we had done and like the results of it.
Mm-hmm.
In this, that's being replaced by a 6-page preview of the second book, fully colored, fully lettered.
Okay.
And one of the big reasons I wanted to do this was also to show just how much Dean, the artist of the book, how much his line work has improved, and show off the talents of our new colorist.
Right.
We had Paul Billick on the first book, who did a very solid job, but he's from the Ukraine. It was very difficult to maintain stuff with him. He's doing well now, but like at the time when we were getting the book together, it was going nuts. So we were just not being able to get deadlines done. So we went swapped over to another colorist, Eugene Bedevu, who has done a tremendous job. And like as good as Paul's colors were, Eugene's is on a whole other level. So we really wanted to have this ability for people to look at how the book has grown from book 1 to book 2 before crowdfunding the second book, and it's going to be an exciting time.
Cool. Yeah, and that's good to hear, because to be honest, there's a lot of people that do their first book and then it's like a year before the second book. They plan to do 4 or 5 books, but it's like a year or more in between books. And I think people drop off when you do that, like
I do agree, and to be fair, it's been like 2 years since the first. Like we did this in 2021,
right.
but that's also why we're doing the Second Chance campaign now with this. With all these special covers. I do know that we're going to have a pretty solid base coming out to back the second book, because I do a pretty decent job with letting people know about when we're looking at doing things. And the first book got a lot of high praise, and it was great. But like I do ultimately agree with you, and this is one of the things that's very difficult from an indie comic creator perspective, especially if you're just #just a writer like me, where I have to find the time to write the script, which for the Embrace, I not only have to find the time, I have to be in like the right emotional state. It was one of the big reasons the second book took as long as it did, was because everything like I ended up, on happier news, like I won my custody fight and everything like that. So I was just busy being a single dad and having my kid all the time. And so every single time I'd sit down to write the book, like there's this kind of somberness that I need to have to tell this story properly. And I would just be like, I don't feel that right now. So yeah. But
so sorry, I just got a weird text from my girlfriend.
That's all good, man.
No, it's fine. So as I was so you have book 2 planned or done. It'll be coming out as soon as this is done, which is amazing. I think that's a great incentive for people to like try to jump on and do this. And so it's going to be 4 issues total? Is that what you said?
5, maybe
Okay.
6.
Maybe 6.
Like
okay.
the third book does some pretty heavy lifting narrative wise. I might end up having to split it into 2 books, and each book is between 40 and 60 pages.
Wow.
So like they're big books. Like this first story is 40 pages. The second book is I think 52.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to produce, and I don't think people realize that as well. Like even just doing a 32-page book on a monthly basis, like what it really takes to produce that from one of the big 2. So that's cool. So not to not to keep this going on. I mean, not to cut you off, but again, like I said, we do try to keep these to about a half hour. So I'm going to ask you the most important question that we always ask people. The link to the Kickstarter will be down below, but where can people find you online and find all your other work?
So you can find me online at Nine Realms Publishing on Facebook, and then I believe my Instagram handle. I changed it recently because I'm trying to like it was a personal profile before, and so I'm now
Right.
doing that. Is at 9RP Comics. On Twitter, I'm at Elysian Fields _0. I don't really go on there much at this point because comics Twitter is a cancer. But like
Okay.
I mean, there's so much drama and everything that goes on
Well,
over on Twitter. It's not fun.
that's a
So
lot of social media anymore, but yeah, Twitter is one of
yeah,
the
I mean,
worst.
yes, but like generally speaking, if I'm interacting with comics people on Instagram or Facebook, it's like, oh man, this art looks really cool, man, good stuff. Whereas if I go and I look at like Twitter, it's just let's complain about everything in the world. So I just kind of stay off of there at this point. Um, like I'll post stuff to promote and what have you, but like I generally try not to engage because everybody has an opinion over there and
Yes.
I'm just tired of hearing it.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. All right. Another quick question. So you got the Embrace issues 1 and 2. You got other. Do you have any other books that are in the
I
works?
I do actually. So as I said, I have a reboot of my launch series Elysian Fields, which
Hmm.
to put it as simply as possible is like Mortal Kombat with heroes of mythology. Like
Okay.
it like it's there's an tournament in the underworld every 1,000 years held between all the respective gods of the dead from different mythologies, and they bring together teams of heroic champions to fight on their behalf
Right.
to crown the next lord of the underworld. So like that's like the whole thing. The team that we focus on is Team Hades, which consists of Achilles, Heracles, and Hippolyta in the reboot. In the original, it was Theseus, but I figured bring in some girl power on there, and uh, also it was a thing of when I was writing Theseus before, I had certain plans with him, but he felt like the most stale character of the three that I had. So
Right.
he's one of the things like I like it. He had a very cool design, but like I figured, all right, let's bring some girl power in, and on top of that, I can kind of keep some of the things I was planning on doing with Theseus, but I think Hippolyta has a way more rich story for me to tell in this than I did with Theseus. So
Okay. I, there's nothing wrong with that at all. All right. Cool. So we will. People should keep an eye out for that then as well.
yes, and then I do have I did a book called Judex with Global Frequency Studios. We partnered up. That's available. I think you can still get it on Indiegogo. Is just the book. It's black and white noir style story in the vein of like The Shadow. And then we've got I have a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Roman history parody called SPQR's Bizarre Adventure Rubicon Invaders. If you guys are interested in that and you see the art on Instagram and everything, just hit me up. I have plenty of extra copies. If you guys hit me up with the payment for that and your shipping, I'll get it out to you. I don't have like an official store up yet.
Okay.
And then I have I have lots of stuff. Like I've written a whole bunch of stuff for a whole bunch of different people.
All right then. Well, everyone should keep an eye out for all that stuff. And then the question that we normally wrap up on is, how do you measure success?
Ooh, that's a how would I measure success? Well, um, I feel like I'm going to narrow this down to how do I measure success as an indie comic creator?
Okay.
Because success is a broad term.
Yes.
Is going to be a bit harder to do. But as an indie comic creator, I feel like the biggest measure of success is, do you see your audience growing? And what is the feedback to your work? I have been very fortunate. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there aren't a lot of people who just, like most people don't like to say bad things about stuff, like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the indie comics, because it is so insular and there are like everybody's kind of friendly with one another. But like, I feel like if you see if you see a lot of people talking about a book, it's genuinely good. If you
Right.
see nobody's really saying anything about the book, it's probably not. There are definitely exceptions to the rule.
Right.
Um, but like generally, that's how I've noticed it. So, what's the feedback I'm getting, and am I increasing my readership every single time? Right? Like, do I have more backers? Not even just more backers that I don't know who they are on this campaign than my previous one.
Right.
Am I reaching people? Are my stories engaging people? Am I doing this right? And that's how I would measure the success as an indie comic creator, is the ability to get our stories out there, resonate with people, and grow and continue to grow until, we either get noticed or are able to just run our own operation. It can become a full-time thing where like there is no side gig or anything like that. Now, that's a very difficult thing to get to,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that that's the goal for most of us, is to at some point be in a position where we're able to put everything else aside and focus on doing this because it's what we love.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, until then, we got bills to pay and mouths to feed.
Exactly. Exactly. One day I'll be able to just do this full time.
Yeah,
So,
I feel you.
cool. That's a great answer. And you know, it's one of those questions like I love asking repeat guests, especially when it's like a year or two later that they're on, because the answer is always different. So keep that in mind.
I will.
uh,
I will do my best.
all right. Well, on that note, boys and girls, as always, well, first off, thanks for Michael for joining us this week. Make sure you check
Thank you
out
for having me.
his Kickstarter. Link is down below. Check out all of his social medias. Again, that will all be linked below. And as always, thanks for watching, and don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.